Well, everybody knows the Zimbabwean voice now, that's for sure. And it's a beautiful voice, that one. One of unity, one of togetherness, one of peace, one of love, you know. That's the way forward. Oga, Oga.
From the African Highway Podcast Network, this is Zimbabwean Voices, the podcast where we shed light on Zimbabweans from across the world, shifting the Zimbabwean narrative for the better. In this episode, I had the luxury of interviewing Kuda Mapeture, who is the founder of a beauty pageant called Miss Deaf Pride Zimbabwe. She is deaf, as I mentioned, and I learned so much from this interview. Firstly, because I'm almost embarrassed to say she was the first deaf person I've had a long conversation with. And we had to have an interpreter there to, of course, bridge the gap between ourselves. But I just learned so much in the sense that, firstly, you are never too small to make a difference. In fact, it's imperative that you make a difference. So she started out her beauty pageant in Norton in Zimbabwe, and her intention was to shed light on deaf women in her community through art, music, and culture, and then through doing so, give them the platform to express themselves, and of course, to just showcase their beauty to the world. So I learned so much. And my biggest takeout was the importance of shining light on people in the community. But then secondly, the importance of finding ways to empower each other. I was just really challenged because here she is, deaf, and Zimbabwe doesn't have a lot of great facilities for deaf people, male and female. But she did what she could to, of course, open up that channel for people in the community. And what I'm still stuck with now is how best do we empower the deaf community? Is it learning sign language? Is it, hiring, deaf people? I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is that I was really inspired by this, and she planted a seed in my head, and yeah, I just really wish I can want to really work towards being more of service to the deaf community. Maybe not now, but in the future as well. But enjoy. Guys, thank you so much for your time, Kuda. I'm very excited to interview you and hear about your story. I think your story can be very inspirational to many Zimbabweans across the world who hear about your story and how you've used your history to empower others through being deaf. So thank you for your time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perfect. You're welcome.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
So amazing. And also I want to say also thank you for Mr. Takunda as well for your time. Mr. Takunda, I know you are the interpreter here with us today. So I wanted to say thank you for you being here to help us translate our communication. Mm-hmm.
All right, that's great. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Good. So maybe to start, I think there'll be people who will be watching and listening. And before I started, I wanted to firstly just introduce myself in sign language. And the reason I want to do that is because I don't think a lot of people, I think it's something that I learned recently. So I think it's important to just do that again so that everyone else can maybe take note of the fact that it's important that we start learning how to communicate in sign language. So I'll say once again, hello. My name is Jumi.
Perfect. Interesting.
Cool. Amazing. So Kuda, firstly, how are you?
This is how we clap in sign language.
We go like this.
This is how we. Yes.
Yay, amazing.
They can't hear the clapping.
Yes. So you go like this. Okay, amazing. Cool. So Kuda, firstly, how have you been and how are things going with, I know you started the Miss Deaf PrideTrust. How have you been and how are things going at the moment?
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Dumi. My name is Kuda, like what you have heard. My name is Kuda Mapeture, and I'm the founder of Miss Deaf Pride. So, back to your question. For now, I have noticed so many challenges. The deaf community, they've got so many challenges. So, like before, I always noticed these challenges when I grew up. So I realized that I should work on these challenges for for my colleagues so that they will have a better future. I'm talking about the deaf community. They've got so many challenges because of their deafness. So they are fight. So as Miss Deaf Pride Zimbabwe Trust, I was inspired when I went to South Africa for Miss Deaf Africa competitions, and from there I was crowned as the second princess for Miss Deaf Africa. That was 2016. Then I was also the Miss Deaf Africa photogenic. So back from South Africa, I was expecting a very big celebration in this country. You know, like what others are doing, like Miss Zimbabwe. So and then I realized something. There was nothing like that, which means there was a gap for the deaf community. So that challenge drove me to this extent that I should fight for the deaf community because they are marginalized. So right now I've noticed they've got so many challenges. For an example, the access to information, the true access information, because the information is not coming in sign languages. So let's say for the interviews and for the information that is being spread, you find that the info is sign language barrier, sign language information and dissemination. There is a gap there which needs to be solved.
Understandable.
So
And
now
that's
I'm trying to bridge that gap by providing.
okay.
So she was saying use in sign language which contains some of the informations that really matters to the community.
Okay, that's amazing. And tell me, how did you even get invited to Miss Deaf Pride Africa? How did that even come about?
Okay, so for that competition, it was in South Africa. It was in South Africa. So I was under the Miss Deaf Zimbabwe. So they were looking for someone who can go and represent the country. So when I saw that advert, so I realized that in Zimbabwe, we didn't have that support, let's say for someone who wants to go and represent the country and you are deaf. So it was very hard for me. So I had to look for the sponsors who can sponsor me. So actually, I have to give thanks to my family and friends who helped me for that. So my brother's friends, and my brother uh, supported me to go to that competition. So when I went to that competition, it motivated me. That competition pushed me to an extent that I realized the gap that we have in Zimbabwe and the challenges that we have as the deaf community. So from there, I realized something. I came back with a positive thinking that the deaf can do anything. So for now, I'm very excited because now I can believe in myself. I can believe even that the deaf, they can do anything.
Incredible. Okay, so maybe if we take it back to your upbringing, so you were born deaf. Are you the only deaf person in your family? And yeah, where were you born? What was your upbringing like? And yeah, maybe we can start there.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, likely
Mm-hmm.
for that in my family, I was born and grew up in Norton,
Mm-hmm.
and in my family, we are we've got two. Me and my sister, we are deaf, and my
Mm-hmm.
I've got brothers and sisters also.
Mm-hmm.
So you find when someone born a deaf child, there are a lot of misunderstandings. There are a lot of confusion uh,
Mm-hmm.
in our parents. So since I was the second deaf in my family, so it was not like a big challenge for my family to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
So I went my primary. I did my primary in Norton,
Mm-hmm.
then my secondary. You find when I was in Norton for that primary school, it was
Mm-hmm.
called Dudley Hall Primary School.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sister, she's talent. So we used to communicate each and every time at home, so that everything was perfect because we understand each other using our sign language. So it is
Mm-hmm.
very hard for someone who maybe in a family, then maybe one person is deaf,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was easy because we used to encourage each other that one day we have to be somewhere, my sister. So I
Mm-hmm.
encourage the parents, let's keep on supporting the deaf. If you born
Mm-hmm.
someone a deaf child, you must
Mm-hmm.
support. Like I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciate my mother and my father. They stood up
Mm-hmm.
with me. They molded
Mm-hmm.
me. They mold me until this day.
Mm-hmm. And how did they learn? Because I think I can imagine your parents, they have your sister, and then they find out that one, she can't hear. And I think maybe the big thing that maybe is a disconnect in maybe the hearing community is that where do you even start to learn sign language? Where do you go? Are there books? Are there tutorials? So how did they learn? And then the second question is does all of your family now speak sign language with you guys? Well, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like what I've said,
Mm,
my family is very supportive.
mm,
Uh, so when I went to school,
mm,
I was taught to communicate in sign language. Then I
mm,
have to come back home, after lunch or maybe just after the supper. So
mm,
we used to teach each other, you know.
mm,
So
mm,
we started to teach my parents first and my sisters and brothers so that we can have our own. So like we've got our domestic communication, like the
mm,
language that our own way of communication in within the house
mm,
as a family. So
mm,
this is a way like we communicate in a way so that they can just understand me as a family. So that kind of sign language
mm,
it's different with the other
mm,
the conventional sign language which we can communicate right now. So
mm,
I think for that it was very easy, and I'm proud of my family. We
mm.
Everyone can communicate with me right now.
Good. Okay. And when you went to school in Norton, was it specifically a school for the deaf? Or was it a school where, you've got deaf kids and also non-deaf kids and what have you?
Okay. In Norton,
Mm-hmm.
like it was not only for the deaf, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, there was a certain group for the deaf,
Mm-hmm.
Mm, like that group, it like what they call a special class, something like that, so that they can
Mm-hmm.
get or
Mm-hmm.
people living with disability,
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, there was a teacher who was very good in terms of communicating in sign language.
Mm-hmm.
So that teacher, but said suddenly She was passed away. Maybe I was 16. I remember I was 16-year-old. So then when I went to Emerald Hill, for Emerald Hill, just a school of deaf. It's a school of deaf. So it's like we'll be deaf the whole school, you know. So it's like we'll be communicate. The whole school will be communicating in sign language. So I did my secondary there from Form 1 to Form 4, and everything was perfect.
Okay.
So
Okay. I almost feel embarrassed to say that. I think I was saying to Takunda earlier that this is the first conversation that I've actually had with a deaf person, and the reason I bring that up is to say, where I went to school, it was only just hearing people, and there were no non-hearing people. So the question I have for you is, what did you prefer? Did you prefer a school where it was mixed, hearing and non-hearing? Or did you prefer Emerald Hill where it was just school for the deaf? If was it easier, you know?
yeah, I think what is important, I think we must have a school for the deaf only. So because like when we interrupt as deaf community only, we use what we call the deaf culture. But let's say if we mix them with the hearings, that would be difficult for the deaf because like the teacher will be presenting, will be like saying something, you know, or not using sign language. So which means there will be a gap there. So I think by having a school which is specifically focused on the deaf community, it's very good. I support that. But again, I would like to encourage the society that everyone must learn sign language. Because it's like everyone have got the possibility to become deaf, you know. So, so it is very important if we can socialize and maybe sometimes uh, include and with the deaf community.
No, that makes sense. And what I want to find out is how so for example, you had a school where you had a special class and then or a class with the people who couldn't hear and then a hearing class. Were people in the hearing class ever taught how to learn sign language? Because sometimes you might have a case where you are now just operating amongst others, kids in the special class, but then you can't actually communicate with each other. So my question is, were they ever taught how to communicate with each other? And if not, how can we, learn? Where can we find that information?
Okay. Thank you very much. Like what we have asked in Norton, like most of the times, the children who were not deaf at that time, it was depending on someone's character, you know, like someone, if he liked to play with the deaf, they always come in. And it was not like a mandatory. So it's all start with the attitude of someone, you know. If you love the person deaf, it will motivate you to an extent that you start learning. And if you have a friend who is deaf, it's an obviously that you are going to learn sign language. Then, so for now, as Miss Deaf Pride Zimbabwe, we've got this program that we are doing right now. We are offering the sign language trainings for free to the service providers because they are the ones who are having the challenge of communication with the deaf community. For an instance, let's say someone who is a teacher, you never know, you might encounter a person who is deaf how are they going to communicate with the deaf community? So we still have that challenge. There is what we call a deaf culture, like what I've said. A deaf culture, it is a way that the deaf community communicate to understand each other deeply. So it is very important if the service providers engage with us learning sign language so that they can communicate with the deaf community. Let us all learn sign language, guys. Sign language is very good language, and it's apparently it's one of our languages right now, one of our 16 languages in Zimbabwe. So because like what I've told you, like what I've said, or you never know tomorrow, no one knows tomorrow. You can tend to be a deaf person. Like now, I've got someone who is 26-year-old, is now deaf. At 26-year-old, is now deaf. He was able-bodied for the past 25 years, but right now she's deaf. So meaning it is very important for everyone to learn sign language.
And you said that you guys are offering programs right now. So would that be, how would we reach out for those programs? Would it be via Facebook, online, Facebook? Do we physically come to Norton? How can we, hearing people say, we want to learn sign language, where can we go to get this information?
Okay, for that, we are still planning to have an online sessions due to the COVID, due to this pandemic. We used to have physical trainings, like where people came to our offices and they have their lessons. But now, because of this pandemic, we are going to plan for the online session. So, like now, we are aiding the people who are willing to come and learn in the group. Then we'll come up with the proper arrangements for the lesson session. So
Amazing.
we'll be using Zoom and Facebook also for them. We are
Okay.
just trying to bridge that gap, like
Good.
leaving no one behind.
Phenomenal. And you mentioned that the idea of leaving no one behind. And you said there's a big thing that's happening now where there's what they call like an information gap. And I can't help but think, in the hearing community, for example, when a child is small, you tell them that they can be anything. You can be an athlete, you can be a writer, you can be whatever, but to be something, you need someone who can teach you and give you information right now, right? So my question is, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in the deaf community? Or rather, I can say, do you feel like in the deaf community, because no one is learning sign language in the hearing community, there's limitations to what a child can become in the deaf community?
Okay. Now, like what I've said, we've got a very big challenge for the deaf community. Let's talk about the deaf children. As compared to someone who can hear and speak, the parents used to teach us, like, when you grow up, I want you to do this and do that. Let's say, for instance, someone born a deaf child. How can that person taught his child? How? Because maybe he or she cannot communicate sign language. So you find the future, do we have the bright future for the deaf? We don't have. Because no one is giving them courage. Like, no one is giving them ideas. No one is giving them support. So like, let's encourage the parents. The parents, they have to fight for the future of their children. Like, they have to take them to school, We've got Emerald Hill in Harare. I think it's one of the biggest schools for the deaf. With the teachers who can communicate sign language. Again, the second challenge, it's about the police. Let's say you know about gender-based violence cases. The deaf community are being harassed, and a lot of violence is happening. But the police, they can't communicate sign language right now. Even the teachers, some teachers in the school, even the nurses, or to mention, we can say, all the service providers, they can't even communicate sign language. So how best can they help? How are they going to help someone who is deaf? Or even the lawyers? In fact, let's say someone is going to court right now. You find it's about extending the days. You come on this day, you come on this day. Just because they'll be saying like, we don't have interpreters, but it's something that those judges and lawyers can learn. It's very easy. I think it's one of the easiest language right now, sign language. So I encourage them to partner with us so that we can teach them sign language, so that they can help. Even now, we've got the COVID restrictions, but the information, it was just on radios, TVs. We didn't have any information in sign language. So you find sometimes the deaf people, or they'll be like, people will be like they are ignorant, but it's not like they're ignorant, because they don't have the access to that information. Sometimes you find when someone, maybe when the police came, they try to write, to tell the patient to write down, but you find our English, and the English that they expect is very different, because we're using the deaf culture. So they call it a broken English. So you find they'll start laughing, or maybe not interested with what someone is trying to explain, because they'll be like, I'm not getting the sense of what you have writing.
That's so true and so accurate, and thank you for sharing that. You mentioned that it's quite an easy language to learn. I know I was speaking to Takunda here, and he was telling me that he didn't know anything, and then within 2 weeks you taught him how to almost learn enough to interpret a play that you guys did. So again, my question is, if one wants to learn sign language, how long, not of course it'll take time, but is it quite easy to learn? Because some people might be intimidated. They'll say, is this, how quickly can I learn this? Can I be fluent? Is it easy? Is it difficult? Just so we can have a sense of that.
Okay, I think now it's very clear, because like you have learned, like I saw you telling me your name, you are signing your name. So it means it's very easy, because it was your first time, and I'm really excited that you're a fast learner. So that only can tell us that sign language is a very easy language, because it was your first time, but you manage, you see. So by mixing and by meeting the deaf community, I'm telling you, in 2 months, 3 months, everything will be fine. So because 2-3 months for basic, you'll be okay. Able to communicate with the deaf person. So now this is fine. Like it's very short and clear. You'll be moving, So 2-3 months, you'll be okay.
2-3 months. Okay, amazing. And I think for anyone else listening, they can also get that encouragement to say, look, it's very easy to learn your name. I can say, I learned it within 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And I was practicing in the mirror, but it was very easy to learn.
It's very easy.
And you mentioned earlier that from a possibilities of what from a deaf child's perspective and what a child can be. I know with Miss Deaf PrideTrust, one of the big inspirations for you was encouraging other young women to show their talents. Maybe you can share kind of some stories of other women that have been on the in the pageant or where you have worked with that have done other things, and maybe shed light on what those things are and their stories, just so we can see, what other deaf women are doing in Zimbabwean society. Mm-hmm.
So, like when we started this Miss Deaf PrideTrust, our main goal was to empower the young women who are deaf. So, and to fight for their rights so that they can stand on their rights. Because you find there was a constitution illiteracy for the deaf community. So we did so many workshops just to try to educate them so that they can know their rights, because it was very important and for them to understand their rights so that someone cannot abuse their rights. But from the feedback that we had from the workshops, we find it was their first time to hear about something about rights, that we have got rights to this thing, we've got rights to education, we've got right to information and everything. So for now, if something happened within the community, they are it's now easily for them to identify that their rights have been abused. So now they are now coming to office and reporting so many different cases. Like we have been doing SRHR workshops for the women with hearing impairment. So from there, you notice that some of them didn't even understand about their cycle, so which is a great achievement. Now they can really understand about that. Then moving to Miss Deaf Pride Pagent, we did it was 2019, then 2019, and then it was a national competition. Like we took the girls from all corners of Zimbabwe, all four corners of Zimbabwe. Then the queen, after that, the queen went to Seychelles for the competitions. And she was, and luckily, I'm very excited about that, because she was the first princess, okay, for Miss Deaf Africa, which means Zimbabwe, we are doing great. So from there, now even empowering other deaf, she's based in Gweru, and she's doing great. Gweru, she's doing workshop, and she even interact with the other deaf community in Gweru. So it's a great achievement, because for us as deaf communicators, we need someone who can just explain something in sign language. So we are doing this for the sake of the deaf community, because we want a better deaf community. We don't want people to view us as a charity, like when they saw someone who's deaf, it's just like maybe we want to beg or want. No, we want deaf community, empowered community.
Fully. I watched something on the news the other day, and there was a company that I think they owned a hotel, and they hired, I think, about 100 deaf staff in South Africa. And then, of course, now they have an interpreter at the hotel, and then you've got people, in the deaf community who are working in this business, which was great, I thought. But are similar things happening in Zimbabwe, where there's Zimbabwean companies that are hiring, hearing and non-hearing people, and helping create those kind of inclusive environments.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. In South Africa, South Africa is well upgraded. South Africa is very inclusive. Yeah, but in Zimbabwe, we don't have something like that. I think it's something that we need to advocate for, so that they can maybe include. We are just trying to advocate for that. So maybe if the government may do, what we call a textularization, maybe if a company employs someone who is disabled, who is living with a disability, there is this certain for the textularization and something. So it's something that we are still trying to advocate for, but it's an ongoing thing. I think the community, we need a community awareness about this community, because they think maybe it's very difficult to work with someone who is deaf, but it's an advantage for a company to work with someone who is deaf. Why? Because by just communicating and interacting with someone who is deaf, you'll be able to communicate sign language. So it is an advantage for the company also, or to have that. Because what I can tell and encourage the company is the deaf can do anything.
That's so true and so correct. And right now, of course, we have cases where we've got schools like the ones we went to in Norton, and then you go to Emerald Hill as an example. From a career perspective right now, and forgive my ignorance, I'm just asking, and I don't know, what are the various things you see people in the deaf community do after high school? Is it university, or are there other, what are the different career paths that people are choosing in the deaf community right now? So we can see how we can help people, how we can broaden it, because it might be limited right now. So we can see how we can broaden it,
Okay, thank you for that question. Let's say when someone went to secondary school, after that, you find there are a lot of challenges, guys. Like it's a financial problem. If someone got the subjects which said, maybe if you've got these subjects, you can do these things. But for the deaf community to go to university, it's very difficult, because it's like they don't have the support from the family, and, like we don't have any statutory which can speak about the deaf education, or maybe if it was there, maybe it was easy for them. And also, let's say we've got graduates, but you find a lot of graduates right now, they're doing vending in town. Why? Because no one is even employing the deaf community. The company will be like, for us to hire or to start working with this person at our company, it means we also need an interpreter. But you find in South Africa, everything is very well, but in Zimbabwe, it's different. The interpreters, they are very expensive in Zimbabwe. So everything, the disability life in Zimbabwe, it's very expensive. Because you find for a deaf, let's say he wants to go for an interview, it means he or she has to hire an interpreter, of which the interpreters, they are very expensive. I can tell you again, interpreters, they are very expensive. So it's very difficult for the deaf community. So at least if we have got maybe if we had maybe scholarships for the deaf or for people living with a disability, it was very easy for them to go and learn in other countries, so that they will have a better future. But we don't have something like that. But now we are just trying, and we hope everything will change.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if there is any corporate or if the government realize
Mm-hmm.
this issue, I'm sure the deaf community will change. Their life will totally change because they've got many talents. There is many talents within the deaf community, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
recognized.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like me, I've got my organization, Miss Deaf Pride, and also I do modeling.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I can make jewelry,
Mm-hmm.
for me to
Mm-hmm.
survive. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we've got lots of talent in deaf community. So in future, I'm planning to continue with my education so that I will have something, and I'm planning to have something for health, to
Mm-hmm.
learning something for health so that I can help other deaf community.
Yeah. So I think for any, whether it's a corporate listening or someone in government, it would be great, of course, to see how we can bridge this divide and offer more inclusive environments for not only people in the hearing community, but also in the deaf community. But then secondly, Kuda, from me, you've done, of course, terrific work in terms of saying, yes, I'm deaf, but I'm going to empower myself with this foundation, with the jewelry that I create and all of these things. Are there other people in the deaf community? Because as you mentioned, deaf people can do anything, right? And that's even start foundations or businesses of their own that they can also run and then also work with other deaf people. So are there any examples of that in Zimbabwe beyond yourself, where there are other deaf people, running foundations and organizations?
Yes, we've got organizations in Zimbabwe who are working with the deaf. Some of them, they are they've got organization who works with the deaf. Some they train sign language. And for my side, it's not like I'm working with the deaf only. I'm working with the hearing, so that we can be inclusive, and we are trying to make it inclusive, or to make it equal, so that everyone must accept and must understand the deaf community. So we are just trying to bridge that gap, Or speaking about the deaf talents, you find some of them, they are carpenters, professional carpenters. Some they do bakings, some they do, you know, uh, confectionery. Yes, something like that. But we don't have white collar jobs for the deaf community in Zimbabwe. That's the challenge.
So on the white collar side, that's where it becomes a bit of a limitation. Okay. Okay. Now I understand. So the question then becomes, okay, so how do we help each other? So on your side, I think what you're saying for me is it, one, people in the hearing community to try and learn sign language. That's the first thing I would think. Yes. How do we help each other? Mm.
Mm. Mm. Uh, I think in India, I think we the deaf community, what they need only is to be empowered. If we empower them, if they have some like a business training, if we give them like projects to do, or it will be easy for them, and I'm sure everything will change because uh, maybe if we give a certain percentage to each and every company, like what I was saying on the issue of tax salarization, so that they can include the deaf community within the companies, that would be great. Let's include the people living with a disability in our programming. That would be great. let's, because we don't want to be seen like the charity beast, something
Yes.
like that. We don't want something like that. So we need to be empowered. Give us land so that we can do projects. Give us business trainings, something like that. Because once we are empowered, we will be able to stand for ourselves, and we will be able to lift each other as a community, And I can promise if we empower the deaf community or the people living with a disability, or we will never have such a percentage whereby like 90% of people living with a disability, they are vendors, If you move around in town, or you find each and every corner there is someone who is living with a disability, selling sweets, selling Mapeture, selling airtime. So we don't need something like that. Let's have somewhere where we can say maybe recreational centers, whereby they will have lessons, whereby someone will be coming and give them trainings, to do business, something like that.
Fully makes sense. And then I think maybe just to close off, Kuda, how can we help you? Because I think you are doing that exact work, right? How can we help you? Is it through relationships with people who are in the business community? Is it through donations to your foundation? How can we help you and support you and the work that you're doing?
So I would like to welcome everyone who wants to give a hand to Miss Deaf PrideTrust. We have got so many trainings that we want to do. We have got so many workshops that we want to do. So if you come and partner with us, we will make the difference. We will lift the deaf community together. So like now we want to do the project for making the reusable paper, calling each and everyone who wants to support. Because during to this pandemic, you find the sanitary wear it's very expensive. So we wanted to have a program where we teach them how to make the reusable pad, and we want to move to all corners of Zimbabwe, empowering the deaf community, so that they will have a better community. And there are a lot of trainings that we would really want to do, so that the deaf community will have a better future, will have a better life. We don't want to see this kind of deaf community whereby someone will be living and surviving from vending. And due to this lockdown, you find when they say there's a total shutdown of lockdown, where do you think someone can survive from? It means nothing. It means where do they get rentals? They don't have housing. They don't have anything. They pay rent house. So we need something which is ongoing. We need something which can bring food on the table for the deaf community. So how best can we do it? We can only do it by empowering the deaf community. So we are encouraging the corporates and the government to partner with the deaf community. Let's just try to include them in our programming.
Happy. And Mr. Takunda, anything that you would want us to know? I know you're an interpreter. I think you serve a very important vehicle, that you are in between, both communities. You almost live in between both. So what words of, guidance would you have for us whilst we're on this side for now, before we of course learn, sign language and how to engage?
Oh, okay. I think first thing, what we must take as a consideration is disability doesn't mean inability. I have noticed so many things, so many challenges about the deaf. I was surprised before when I saw the deaf doing drama, comedy, funny, and I was like, oh, how? So from the last project that we did, it was a song for gender-based violence. It
Use it
was in
for,
sign
yeah.
language. Yeah. So it was a song from the deaf guys. So so everyone was like, how? Even now, if I tell you
Sorry,
there was a song, you'll be like, how? So I can say
sorry, keep signing
anything.
for Kuda so that she can be aware. Sorry, that just make, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
So I can say
mm,
anything is possible
mm,
with
mm,
the people living with disability.
mm,
And one thing, I think
mm,
people, every time they think, if you work with a person who is deaf, is very hard and they don't
mhm,
even understand,
mm,
something, they are too emotional. It's
mhm.
different. I can tell you that community is very loud. If they see and if they notice good, this person wants to learn sign language, they
Mm,
support 100%.
mm,
For me, it was very easy because every time I used to go different corners to see, oh, the deaf, then
mm,
we'll be communicating. If you
mm,
fail to sign the word, for an
mm,
example, to love you,
mm,
they will start
mhm.
telling you, no, no,
They
no, no,
would
you are not
teach you.
supposed to sign like this. Hey,
Mm,
they are
mm, mm,
very patient.
mm,
You-
mm,
They see you want to communicate. They
mm,
start helping you communicate,
mm,
which is very
mm,
easy and very important. For now, me,
mm,
I can sign. Uh, this one, Kuda, she's the one
mm,
who taught me. But
mhm.
if I tell you now, it's Kuda who taught me, you can never believe it. You see. But from the
Yeah,
first time
yeah.
when we met with Kuda, she
Mm,
told me that
mm,
no problem. In future, you'll be best of interpret. I was like,
mm,
how?
mm,
They said,
mm,
wait, you need,
mm,
me, I will teach you. Oh,
mm,
slow, but
mm,
surely we'll get there. I can tell you
mm,
now, as sign language is very easy. For me, it's the only
mm,
language that I can understand more than any language
mm, mm, mm,
in Zimbabwe because it's very easy. And for an example, it is very short and it's very you can enjoy signing. It's very
mm.
funny. For an example, you want to say this person, this or
Mm,
this person. Let's say like
mm,
with the mouth only, the mouth can speak
mm.
like it's like you're meaning this person. You're saying this person.
You go like
So
that.
it's very easy.
Mm,
uh, I can imagine way back when we were growing up, there is this
mm,
language we used to like in Zimbabwe, we call it Chibende. This
mm,
language, you're trying to mix the words. Maybe you start saying the word from the back, just to try
mm, mm,
to hide what you are trying to
mm,
say. Maybe it's
mm,
because the family or the father and mother is there. You are just
mm,
trying to hide what you are trying to say. So
mm,
I can imagine now. For an example, let's say, uh, sign language when you're growing.
mm,
Maybe a child can
mm,
communicate sign language. Maybe a
mm,
child and a child are communicating using sign language. It's
mm,
something like that, so that the parents
mm.
cannot understand what they are trying to
Understand?
say.
Yes, yes, yes.
Let's say we have got something like that, and
Mm,
maybe, for an example, in schools, let's say maybe you don't want to disturb everyone. You see,
mm,
within the
mm,
class, and you want to ask something to someone, maybe you'll be using like, sorry, my friend, me,
mm,
I'm not understanding what the teacher is trying to say.
mm,
It's not everyone who can understand. Or you see,
mm, mm,
yeah. So
mm,
is there
mm,
any noise there? There is nothing like
mm,
that, and
mm,
you be like it's not disturbing anyone, or so something
mm,
like this. Then, for an example, let's say it's a relationship, right? It's a
mm,
relationship, maybe a boyfriend and a girlfriend, right? You
mm,
are moving
mm,
in town, maybe you are in a combi or a public
mm,
transport, right? You
mm,
want to communicate something, then you'll be like
mm,
saying, imagine something like that. How sweet is that? And
mm.
then You see, so there are a lot of things why the sign language is very important. Like what Kuda have mentioned, it's true. You can change now to be a deaf person. So,
Mm-hmm.
for an example, for me, I really appreciate Kuda,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to thank God for that. Because, for an
Mm-hmm.
example, now, it's not. I've noticed it's not easy for someone, for the parents, or any person to accept that uh his child or her child is deaf. Well, it's like, I want someone who is deaf. Maybe there is
Mm.
someone who is doing
Yes.
juju or something,
Juju, yeah.
But it's
Mm.
not like that. No, 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 no. It's not like that.
Mm.
It's different. Like before, I can tell you, I've noticed there was this mother. Uh, she born a deaf child, right? Uh, so, so when we met with that
Mm.
mother, she started crying. Why
Mm.
God gave me
Mm.
the deaf child? Me
Mm.
only. So I tried go to America, go to China,
Mm.
just trying
Mm.
to
Mm.
and so that
Mm.
trying the child to talk, something
Mm.
like that to say, no, the child must talk. The child must not
Mm.
be deaf, something like that. Then
Mm.
she
Mm.
cried, she cried, she cried. After
Mm.
she cried, we said, okay, fine, you're finished. Fine. Now we are going to take you to other other
Mm.
kids so that you can
Yeah.
understand that you are not only the person in the world
Only one.
who have got a deaf child,
A
right?
deaf child.
So we went together. Yeah, we went together to Emerald Hill. You know what? She saw the deaf kid. They were busy playing, laughing, enjoying. Kid.
Mm.
She was like, oh,
Mm.
wow. So I'm not the
Mm.
only one in the world.
Mm.
But now I can tell you she is very supportive right now.
Mm.
The child, she's taking the child to Emerald Hill, after
Mm.
Emerald Hill to the lessons together with her. You see,
Mm.
she's now
Mm.
even learning to communicate with the child.
Mm.
But the problem that we have, I think for all the men in the world, we've got the problem. For an example, let's say maybe your wife born a deaf child. You start
Mm.
answering, this is the truth. Is that when we start saying, me, continue
It's
with
you.
this wife.
It's you. Mm.
Hey,
Mm.
me,
Mm.
continue with this wife
Mm.
who bought a deaf child. It means
Mm.
all my kids will be deaf. You see, something
Then
like
they
that. You
leave.
start, boom. You see,
Mm.
so you
Mm.
find
Mm.
there are a lot of divorces because of someone who is born, someone who is deaf, or someone who is disability. But it's not like that. It's not like that.
Mm.
For an example, let's say for me now, for me, Takunda, right? Let's say
Mm.
my wife born a deaf child. What problem
Mm.
there? There's nothing
There's
because me,
nothing.
I'm the father.
Mm.
I can communicate with the child, even the
Mm.
mother, because every time she'll be with the kid, right? So
Mm.
it means the mother is going to communicate. Like there is this, or what we call a mother's language. Rurimi Rwamai.
Mm.
It's there in sign language. If a deaf person, let's say a person who is deaf, born a
Mm.
child who can hear, right?
Mm. Mm.
The sign language there,
Mm.
moto. A child can communicate. Yes.
Mm.
So let's
Mm.
say it's now vice versa. Let's say us as hearing, we are learning sign language, right? We born deaf.
Mm.
We'll be teaching our kids sign language.
Mm.
How about that?
Mm.
We will have an
Mm.
inclusive community, right?
Mm.
Even now, the Miss Deaf Pride Zimbabwe Trust, they are doing the launch for the deaf team for soccer. They are going to come up
Ah.
with a yes, they are
Yeah.
going to come up with a national team for soccer. But tell you the truth, now before the COVID,
Mm.
we did it was 4 games. How many? Four teams. And from these 4 teams, I can tell you the truth. 4 all of these teams, it was Nyaradzo, T1, T2, T3. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team. 4 of these teams, they are going to come up with a national team the national tourism, something.
Mm.
I can't remember the last one. It was 2-0, 1-0, 2-0. And who was the winner? The deaf. You see, so only that can tell you that there is a talent, deep talent within the deaf community, right? When they are doing something, for an example, for driving, in the world, the best driver is a deaf person. Do you know that?
Because they're very aware of everything.
Yes, he's very aware of everything. If you want to be safe, you better employ a deaf driver. So I encourage the ministers, I encouraging everyone. If they want to be safe in terms of driving, of the drivers, the best drivers are the deaf drivers.
Yeah, I've learned so much. I've learned so much about, there's driving, there's soccer, there's of course modeling, making jewelry. There's so much. I think the big things that are standing out for me, it's you said something very important, which is disability is not inability. And then most importantly, it's about being deaf, but empowered. Empowered is I hate the expression deaf and dumb. I don't like that expression. I like the expression deaf and empowered. Do you know what I'm saying? It's deaf and empowered.
Empowered. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Cool.
That's
cool.
That's a good.
Guys, thank you so much. This has been good for me. And so say.
Could I have got something?
Is she there? Is she there still?
Yeah. So we just mentioned about deaf culture. So I think I need to explain to you so that you can understand the deaf culture. It's like deaf culture, it is the way that's used by a deaf person, and like what deaf community does on their living. So it's like...
So is Kuda's screen working? Sorry. Is she working?
Yeah. You can see.
Let me see. Is it working now? Maybe just the camera. Just the camera. It's now working. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's working, right?
Yeah, you're saying deaf culture.
She was saying, yeah. So, like deaf culture, it includes so many things, like how they communicate, how they eat, how they live, everything on that. It's like a culture, like a Shona culture, or what we do within the Shona culture. Okay, she's having some network challenges.
Okay.
Yeah, she's back.
Yeah, she's back now.
Yeah. So for an example about how they eat, you find when they chew, it's like they'll be like, and someone will be like, how? It's because they are deaf, so they don't understand. They don't hear the sound that they are making the sound, when they are chewing. So it's something like that. And what they do, for an example, when they see a person say, just to try to make themselves enjoy, something like that.
So there's a whole culture that there's a whole culture.
It's different with English. Deaf culture is very different with English. Because, for an example, you say, can you say, if you want to go to town, can you say it in English?
I'm going to town.
I am going to town, right? It's I am going to town. That's 5 words, right? Right. For deaf culture, man, it's like going town.
So you can shorten it.
Yes, it's short and it's different. So it's like, how is home? Home is fine. Deaf culture, it's home fine. You see? So it's like a Shona. It's similar to Shona.
You say, okay.
Yeah. It's like a
It's like
slang.
slang.
Like,
There's slang inside there. So
a slang. We can call it a slang. Yeah, it's slang in sign language. Yeah, kumba kuri say kuribo,
Kuribo.
something like that. Yes.
Okay.
So that was it.
What's she saying?
And it's okay. The one thing about there's one thing used to happen when I walk. When I just take a walk, they will be like, maybe let's say a guy wants to approach, saying, yeah, you. Then sometimes someone would think maybe I'm just trying to ignore you. They don't
But you
even
just don't hear.
understand that I'm there. You know, it's a surprise to them to see someone who is deaf, who is beautiful, or who is clean. You know, they think maybe if someone is deaf, must always like dirty, always dirty, or looks like something different. You know.
So was saying.
Even
Go on.
she's saying, even if I go to bank, no one even understands that I'm deaf. So they're like, "Oh, you are deaf? True. You know, it's not easy for them to understand that I'm deaf, but it's my couch, and I'm proud to be deaf. I'm okay with that."
That's amazing. I think the beautiful thing is that you have owned your truth. You know, you owned exactly as you were born, as God made you. You said, "This is what I have. Is how I was born, and I love myself as I am." You know.
Yeah.
Good, guys. This has been good for me. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. What they say, you go like this. That how you do it.
Thank you. You are a fascinator. Yes, thank you. Then you are welcome.
Then you're welcome.
Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome. Yeah.